Dear students, welcome back. In the previous session, we have discussed about the knee extensor muscles, that is quadriceps muscle, and also we have concluded in the last discussion that is the patella is having greater influence on quadriceps muscle function. Yes. Now in this session, we are going to discuss about the patellar influence on quadriceps muscle function. So, this quadriceps muscle is strongly influenced by the patella. Okay, so from the perspective of this mechanical efficiency, the patella lengthens the momentum of the quadriceps by increasing the distance of the quadriceps tendon and patellar tendon from the joint of knee axis. Okay, as we know that joint of knee axis is present horizontal to the femoral condyles. Okay, that is the plane joint axis, and then normally during flexion, what is happening? So we have seen the instantaneous axis of rotation. So what is happening? So this axis is going to shift posteriorly, isn't it? And then during extension again it will come towards here. Okay, so by this factor, so here this is the resultant action force of the quadriceps. So what is happening? Because of this patella here, the distance between the joint axis and the resultant force is increased. Okay, so because of this increase, what will happen? The rotatory component of this resultant force is going to increase. So if the patella is not present, just think that, then what will happen? The resultant force may fall at this level. Okay, so then what happens? So the reaction force, the momentum is going to decrease. Okay, so because it will fall here, so if you can compare this, so the joint axis, this momentum is now decreased because of the absence of this patella. So based upon this principle, what is present here on the distance of this momentum, which has a greater efficiency to the quadriceps muscle function. Okay, so is that patella is influencing in all throughout the range of motion, or it is particularly influencing in any only some degrees of range of motion? Now we are going to discuss. So in all the way in the presence of patella, so the momentum is going to increase. Okay, so if it is absent, definitely the momentum is going to decrease. Okay, so if the momentum is decreased, then the rotatory component, the rotatory force is going to decrease. Okay, now we will see how this quadriceps muscle is going to function in different ranges of extension from flexion. Okay, yes. If you see the patella here, it is acting as an anatomical pulley which is deflecting the action line of the quadriceps muscle away from the joint center. Okay, increasing the angle of pull on the tibia to enhance the ability of the quadriceps to generate extension torque. Okay, so the patella does not, however, function as a simple pulley. This is very, very important, as we know that patella is acting as an anatomical pulley, but here it is not acting as an simple pulley here, because In a simple pulley, the tension created on both the sides are same. But in the case of this patella, the forces which are generated in the ligamentum patellae and the quadriceps tendon is different. That means here the tension in the patella, in the ligamentum patellae is less, whereas in the quadriceps tendon is more here. Okay. And also the knee joints geometry. Okay, the knee joints geometry and the patella together control the quadriceps angle of pull on the tibia as the knee flexes and extends. During early flexion, okay, during early flexion, the patella plays a primary role in increasing the quadriceps angle of pull in initial stages of flexion. That means the knee is fully extended. So at the initial stages of flexion, the patella plays a primary role in increasing the quadriceps angle of pull. Okay. In full knee flexion, however, this patella is fixed firmly inside the intercondylar notch. So in full flexion, what will happen? This patella, which is going to fix into the intercondylar notch. Okay, which significantly reduces the patella's function as a pulley. In full flexion, the patella's function is significantly reduced at this stage. Then what happens to the quadriceps then in full flexion? So as we know that the joint axis is constantly changing. It is not fixed, isn't it? During flexion, what will happen? The joint axis which is going to shift posteriorly. So during knee flexion also, in complete knee flexion, so here the joint axis which is shifted posteriorly. Then if you see the action line and the joint axis distance, still the distance between the joint axis and the action line is far away than the normal. Then with this it creates a rotational force. With this it creates a rotational force, and the quadriceps maintains a fairly large momentum, isn't it? So because of shifting of this axis towards posteriorly, what happens? The distance between the action line and the joint axis is increased, isn't it? So this is enough to create what you call as a rotation. It will create a rotatory component, and which helps in the movement of the tibia on the femur, okay, on the rounded femur, which causes extension. Okay, so the quadriceps maintains a reasonable ability to produce torque in full knee flexion, although the patella contributes little to its momentum. During fully flexed position, the patella doesn't produce any momentum, or if it is producing little momentum also, the quadriceps is having more momentum, so it can create an extension torque. Okay, during knee extension from full flexion, the momentum of the quadriceps muscle lengthens. Okay, then what happens? As the patella leaves the intercondylar notch. Okay, so from full flexion to extension, what will happen? So here the patella, which is fixed in the intercondylar notch in full flexion, it is going to release. Okay, and begins to travel up and over the rounded femoral condyles. Here you can see. So this is up to 90 degrees of flexion. Then what is happened? So the femoral condyle, the patella is moving on the femoral condyles now. Okay. And at about 50 degrees of knee flexion, the femoral condyles have pushed the patella as far as it will go from the axis of rotation. And the influence of changing momentum on the quadriceps torque production is readily apparent when the knee extension strength is measured throughout the range of motion. And the peak torques are often observed at approximately 45 to 60 degrees of knee flexion as a region in which both momentum and the length tension relationship of the muscle are maximized. Okay, so once it reaches to 45 degrees, okay, 45 degrees of knee flexion, 45 to 60 degrees of knee flexion, then what will happen? Again the momentum is going to increase. Okay, the momentum is going to increase for the quadriceps because it is coming forward. Then again the joint axis and this action line. So what is happening here? The momentum is increased. Okay, so and also if you see the length tension in the quadriceps muscle also increased at the range of 45 to 60 degrees of knee flexion. Then it creates maximum extension torque at this point. Okay, and afterwards, after 45 degrees of extension, then it is going to decrease to 30 degrees and 20 degrees and 0. Towards that range, what will happen? Again the moment arm will once again diminish because at this stage there is no translations of this femoral condyles will taking place, and here this axis during flexion it is shifted to posterior, isn't it? And now then it is shifted to anterior during extension. So anterior, afterwards it reached to some point, then this momentum is going to decreased. Okay, so once after reaching 45 degrees of flexion and if the extension is now less than 45 degrees of knee, from the knee flexion, then the momentum is going to decrease. Although the patella's effect on the quadriceps momentum is diminished in the final stages of knee extension. Okay, the small improvement in joint torque provided by the patella may be the most important here. Okay, so although it reduces, but at the final stages, at the end range of extension, the quadriceps is in shortened position, which reduces. So that means almost all in this stage what will happen? So the quadriceps is in a shortened position, and at that stage the quadriceps is not having an ability to generate active tension. Then what happens? The decreased ability of the quadriceps to produce active force makes the relative size of the momentum critical to torque production in the last 15 degrees of knee extension. So once full extension is created, then there is no momentum will exist between the joint axis and this action line. So due to the presence of patella here, which increases the momentum and causes the final 15 degrees of knee extension, which is very important to lock here, to lock the knee joint here. Okay. So the patella's role in the increasing quadriceps angle of pull on the tibia enhances torque production. Okay, and increasing the quadriceps momentum, by definition it means increasing the rotatory component of the pull of the quadriceps on the tibia. Okay, the quadriceps, however, not only produces an extension torque but also creates an anterior shear to the tibia on the femur. Okay, this anterior translation force must be resisted by active or passive forces capable of either producing a posterior tibial torsion or passively resisting the anterior tibial translation, which are imposed by quadriceps. That means at this stage it requires some force which should resist this active or passive force, which should resist this anterior translation as well as which is imposed by the quadriceps. So that passive forces which are going to reduce this anterior translation force, which is imposed by the quadriceps, is done by the anterior cruciate ligament. Okay, the anterior cruciate ligament represents the most prominent passive restraint to the imposed anterior tibial translation of the quadriceps. Okay. Now this increases and decreases in the angle of pull of quadriceps are accompanied by the concomitant increases and decreases in stress in the anterior cruciate ligament. Okay, so the strain on both bundles of the anterior cruciate ligament ordinarily increases as the knee joint approaches full extension. In the absence of this passive stabilizer, such as the anterior cruciate ligament, a quadricep contraction near full extension, what will happen? The patient may describe the knee is giving away. That means something, it is not locking here, but there may be a slipping of this tibia anteriorly is taking place, like that. That is called as giving away. That such kind of thing is expressed by the patient. Okay, the strain on the anterior cruciate ligament evoked by a quadriceps contraction is substantially diminished as the knee is flexed beyond 60 degrees, because the shear component of the quadriceps diminishes from its maximum value. This is the thing happening during knee extension from knee flexion. Okay, if you see here, the person here having a severe quadriceps weakness. This person is having severe quadriceps weakness, and this person is unable to raise the leg, straight leg raise. That means here the knee has to extend, but near full extension the patella increases the momentum only slightly, and here because of this weakness, so there is a decreased in length tension relationship, so the person is incapable of generating sufficient torque to complete the range of motion. Although patella is present, because of the weakness of the quadriceps, the person is unable to raise the leg in straight way. Okay, this is the thing. And also during weight bearing activities, okay, during weight bearing activities, the quadriceps activity knee extension is influenced by number of other factors. Okay, so you can see here, okay, muscles such as soleus and gluteus maximus. So here you can see the gluteus maximus and soleus muscle are capable of assisting the knee joint extension here during weight bearing activities. So these two muscles, the actions of gluteus maximus and soleus muscles, can influence the knee motion in weight bearing, although they are not crossing the knee joint, and these muscles are capable of assisting knee extension. This is one factor. Okay, and then some of the other factors here, this is the weight bearing. The person is doing some weight bearing exercises here, and when an erect posture is attained, activity of the quadriceps is minimal. So in this position, activity of quadriceps is minimal. So at this stage, what is happening? The line of gravity passes just anterior to the knee axis for flexion and extension. You can see this red line is the line of LOG, so which is falling on the anterior aspect, okay, for flexion and extension. So if it is falling anterior to the knee joint, which results in gravitational extension torque that maintains the joint in extension. Although the quadriceps action is diminished during full extension, so how the extension is maintained means the extension is maintained by the gravity here. Okay. Next, the posterior joint capsule, ligaments, and largely passive posterior muscles maintain equilibrium by offsetting the gravitational torque and preventing hyperextension. Okay, so although it creates the extension at the knee joint, but the knee may go into hyperextension. So that is not happening here. But extension is maintained by the gravity, but hyperextension is not taking place here. Why? Because the posterior structures which are going to maintain equilibrium by offsetting the gravitational torque and preventing hyperextension. Okay. So in weight bearing with the knee somewhat flexed, so this is the condition, and as during a squat, so here this is the squats. During the squat, or when someone cannot fully extend the knee, so some people cannot fully extend the knee, as in the case of a flexion contraction, the person who is not extend the knee, so that person is in flexion contraction. So the line of gravity will pass posterior to the knee joint. So all the cases, so here the line of gravity falls on the posterior aspect to the knee joint axis. The gravitational torque will now tend to promote knee flexion, and activity of the quadriceps is now necessary to counterbalance the gravitational torque and maintain the knee joint in equilibrium. So because the quadriceps femoris muscle has the responsibility now of supporting the body weight and resisting the force of gravity, it is about twice as strong as the hamstring muscles now. Okay, although the hamstrings perform a similar function of supporting body weight when there is a gravitational flexion momentum at the hip. The hamstrings are assisted in this function by the large gluteus maximus. Okay, here the quadriceps, however, are the primary knee joint extensors. So here the quadriceps is going to work more to maintain the equilibrium. Okay, so the quadriceps muscle functions differently depending on the activity or exercise condition. During non-weight bearing knee extension, here the above or the non-weight bearing knee extension, the momentum of the resistance, here this is the momentum of the resistance is minimal when the knee is flexed to 90 degrees. So this knee, when the knee is flexed to 90 degrees, the momentum is very much less, but increases as the knee extension progresses. Okay, so this is the thing happening. So therefore greater quadriceps force is required as the knee approaches full extension. So the opposite happens during a weight bearing activities. Okay, that means again it has to come to flexion. Then what is happening? The momentum is going to decrease. Once the momentum is decreasing and the force of the work of the quadriceps is also going to decrease. In a standing squat, the momentum of the resistance is minimal when the knee is extended and increases with knee flexion. Therefore, during weight bearing activities such as squat, the quadriceps muscle must produce greater force with increased knee flexion. So, these are the things which are related to the patellar influence on the quadriceps muscle function. So in the next session, we are going to discuss about the stabilizers of the knee. Thank you.